Today is a very special edition of the Meaningful Meeting because rare is the opportunity for someone who's a very public figure to expose themselves, their failures, their difficulties, and how they handled them. And they expose themselves for the purpose of helping others. And that's what today is all about. My guest today is Colleen Odegaard. Now, a lot of you from the Mothership Market of Charlotte know Colleen as a journalist and a television host, and she's moved on to be a great public speaker and life coach. She's also somebody who very privately, for a long time, very secretly, was going through something very, very difficult. But there's a lot we can all learn from that. It's a shared experience. No matter what it is that you're going through, she's got a great story to tell of how you can overcome it, how you can fight through, and some pitfalls you may want to look out for. So it's a really very special, very in-depth day today. So let's start the meeting.
Whatever you're going through, you will get through it because you're here. And that means you are not alone. This is the Meaningful Meeting. Now your host, Ace Cannon.
So as we get started, let's give a little bit of your background so people know who you are, in case they don't know who you are, because people from all over the country listen to this. Give some background as to who Colleen Odegaard is and how you got to be where you are today.
Who is Colleen Odegaard? What a great question.
That's the big question to start with.
No, my background is in broadcasting, like yours. That's how we met each other and became friends. I worked as a television news broadcaster. I was a journalist for almost 30 years in front of a camera. I started my career in Texas, then moved to California, and then ended up in Charlotte, North Carolina, working at the NBC affiliate in Charlotte for the bulk of my career for 22 years.
So then you ventured off of that and became a life coach, and you're the depressed motivational speaker.
That's what I call myself.
What a great tagline. and how did that go? Was that just something you felt? Was that a calling? Was it just something you backburnered for a while and kind of messed around with and then decided to take that? Because that's a big leap. You had quite a career going for yourself and then just left it all behind to make this big step.
I did. It was kind of crazy. People thought, you're nuts, you're leaving your TV job, which, as you know, Ace, sounds a lot more glamorous than what it actually is. Listen, I loved my television career, and it served me well, and I was ready to start doing something different. Yeah. I mean, I've always been into listening to people's problems. Like, I love what your podcast is about. I actually enjoy talking about difficult emotions and grief. Don't I sound like a good time? Right. I love talking about grief. I'm a barrel of laughs, but I've always been that person for other people. So I started getting certified as a life coach while I was still working at the TV station, and then took on clients. So it was sort of my side hustle. I was doing TV in the day, seeing clients in the evening and on weekends. And then I realized, this could be my full-time gig, and I think I'm ready to go for it. Happened during COVID, and I just thought, yeah, it's time to do it. But it was scary as hell, I'll tell you that. It was really scary to make that shift, but I did that. And so now I have a podcast, and I am a life coach, which I know can sound hokey. And I used to make fun of it too, life coach. Like, what the hell's a life coach? But it's really remarkable, the work that I get to do with my clients. And I'm a public speaking coach and a public speaker and a video coach. I help people be more comfortable on camera.
So when it came time to make that leap, because a lot of people might be listening, before we get into the other stuff that I think is going to be super helpful to people today, there's a moment there where you have to make a decision, where you've spent 30 years building a career, and then it's like, oh man, there has to be a moment of, am I ready to take that step? What was the impetus for you to go, I'm ready, I've got this, I can do this, and it's going to be okay? Was it a matter of numbers and looking at it and go, this is going to work? Or was it just your heart said, this feels right, it's time to make this move?
Great question. I'd say it was a combination of both.
Okay.
And I say that because I never like to tell people, just quit and figure it out later. I don't advise that. I don't think that that's necessarily a great idea. I do think you have to do the math. You have to take a look at your finances. Okay, can I take a lesser of a paycheck for a while? Do I have enough money to stay afloat? Do I have the support of a spouse, or am I a single income family? You have to look at those kinds of things. So what was at that time was in a pretty good place financially. Right. I was still married then, and but my heart more than anything, I believe so much in what I preach to people all the time is self-acceptance and really loving yourself. And I know that sounds soft and fluffy and rainbowy and all that, but it's not. It really is critical for all of us. And every single one of us struggles with insecurities and self-doubt. Everybody. And you know this.
Sure.
After
Absolutely.
interviewing thousands of people, some of the biggest stars on the planet, you know, that's true even for them.
Absolutely.
And and I realized how much I was sort of sleepwalking through my life. I was going to my job. It was almost rote, robotic, kind of perfunctory, just going through the motions day after day, thinking, I know I have more to offer than this, than regurgitating somebody else's scripted copy and talking to people about why they need to get liposuction, when in reality, I'm like, no, just love yourself. You're awesome.
Right.
You're beautiful. So it was this kind of, in my heart, this struggle of, what am I doing? Is this really the best use of what I can do? And I decided it wasn't. So it was sort of a money thing and very much a heart thing.
So you mentioned something in there that at that time you were married.
Mm-hmm.
So when was it that you made the move to life coaching? When was that, about 2020?
2020.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
When was it? How soon after that was it that everything changed? And had the marriage begun to go badly at that point, or were you just blindsided by this later? I'm not sure, because I don't know the circumstances.
Sure, that's fine. So I quit the TV station in November 2020. 5 months later, April 2021, my then husband said, I don't want to be married anymore and I'm going to move out. And so that kind of sucked. That timing was not great because I had just quit my steady paycheck to go all in on my business, which was doing great at the time, which is why I thought, okay, I can really make this work. And then it rocked my world. So to answer your question, we had been arguing a lot for probably 2 years. We were not on the same page.
And how long had you been married at that point?
21 years.
Okay.
And with him 23 years, married 21. And we had just not been on the same page about things, had been arguing a lot, but I never thought divorce was an option. And to be clear to your listeners, I would say, and I think you would probably echo this, we were not a couple, at least publicly facing, who people would have thought would have be getting divorced.
Right.
Like, it shocked everybody, including our closest friends. And he's a nice looking fella. We had nice family pictures, that you can post on Instagram and Facebook. And everyone's like, oh, they're so cute and they're so great. And I wasn't pretending to be anything that we weren't. It's just, really posting pictures of my family. We have nice children. And
but that's a facet of who you were.
yes.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's not that you were lying.
No.
It's not that you were pretending.
No.
That's who you were, but it's only one part of who you were.
Correct. So when he said that, everything, I just felt like life as I knew it had been ripped away from me. And I crumbled.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Because I go back to this, and the reason I ask is because when I was a kid and my parents got divorced, first day of school, I was in the 4th grade. My sister was in kindergarten. First day of school, my mom was a school teacher. And I remember we came home from school and my parents were in the back talking for a long time, and they came out and like out of nowhere, my dad goes, I'm going to be moving out for a while. I was like, I don't even know what that means. And so it was when you say blindsided, did it occur just the way you see, you'd been arguing or whatever, but did he just come home, sit down and say, I don't think I want to be married anymore?
It was in the morning, on a Monday morning before he left for work.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. And, I'm sure he has his story too. He would say, this wasn't a blind side. We'd been fighting. Yes, we've been fighting, but I really didn't think that he would leave.
Right.
And I had hoped that we would try to work on it.
Sure.
And this is what I will tell people. Don't wait to work on your marriage when you have contempt for each other, because then it's too late. If you wait to the point where you have contempt for each other, good luck repairing things.
Yeah.
Like, I think it's great for healthy couples to go to therapy, when things are going well.
I agree.
Right? Before
100%.
it gets out of hand.
The lessons that I learned from therapy, from going through it and still having gone, but especially when I was married before, are all those things that, could have, should have been doing that. That, you look back and go, could have fixed that, before I ever got to this point, if I had known that. Exactly. You're 100% right. So he tells you in the morning, then I guess he goes to work and you're left like.
And I freaked the fuck out.
Yeah.
And screaming, crying, thrashing, all of that.
Yeah.
I remember that day very well. And it really rocked my world. I honestly didn't think that I could function. And I kind of couldn't for a while.
Yeah.
I mean, I've always been a very much an over-functioning kind of person. I started to severely under-function. Like, I had to break my day down into 5-minute increments. It was, make breakfast, take a shower. It was things like that because I was so out of my mind. I was so despondent. It was just so difficult. But I really thought, like, I don't think life can go on for me. I just don't know how to do this.
And how long did that last?
It lasted probably the better part of a year.
Yeah, because there's that moment where the breakup happens, but then you've got the business of handling all of that stuff. And was there any attempt at a reconciliation or anything like that? Because all that stuff drags out even longer. So which makes it even worse as you go along.
Yes.
Or at least it did for me. It made it even worse. You look back, it's like, man, that was a total failure, and we could have bypassed a lot of that stuff, along the way.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So it did drag out,
Yeah.
and I had hoped for reconciliation, and then it became clear that wasn't going to happen. And, but yeah, I mean, the process of getting divorced, as you know, when you're tearing apart, your lives that have been so intimately entwined for more than 2 decades, it takes a minute.
Brutal.
Oh, it's brutal.
It's brutal.
And it brings out the worst in people too, doesn't it?
And people that haven't been through it, I don't think really know. And I also think it's different when 2 people just decide they hate each other and they go at it, is different than if you still care about the situation, when you were trying to like be good about it, if that makes any sense. It can be
does.
even worse if it's when you're trying to like be good about it, because I think that's pulls at your heartstrings even more.
I wanted to be good about
Yeah.
it, but I was so angry and so unhealed.
Yeah.
I mean, the pain was so raw. I felt like I was on fire. I cannot. I've never felt like that before. I've been through a lot of shit in my life, but this was just. And I know now why it cut so deep, goes really deep, but why it hurt so much. I tried to be good about it, but I was angry, and still sometimes I am. I mean, I joked about this. Well, I wasn't joking. I was being serious. People thought it was funny. I said, I think it's going to take me 10 years to forgive. People said, 10 years? I said, yes. I don't think forgiveness, I think especially Christians, we can get this part wrong, like forgiveness, like you just forgive people. And it's like, it doesn't feel right in my body. It's like, no, I'm not there yet.
That doesn't work for me.
It doesn't
It
work.
doesn't.
Come on, let's be real. I like to give people practical stuff that you can do.
Right.
What if you can let go of a little bit of your anger? Just set it down.
Yeah.
Like piece by piece, little bit over time. That seems to work better.
Yeah, it doesn't. Just let it go. It doesn't work. It's not. I mean, I can not think about it or find a way to work, not through it, or just kind of not maybe ignore it a little bit here and there when I need to. But eventually, it's going to surface. It's that's gonna come back up again. Something's gonna set me off because of that frustration, and on knowing what you put into something can be really, really difficult to overcome.
Totally.
So how long was it? Because so many people have been through this. How long was it that you just had that, oh God, I got to get out of this bed today?
I really would say it was bad for about 6 months.
Okay.
Bad for about 6 months. And I started taking antidepressants, and I'm very open about that because I think it was something I needed to do, and going to therapy twice a week. I did EMDR therapy. I did a whole bunch of stuff and really started a meditative practice. I mean, that is something that is a daily part of my routine now that I have to do for myself and for my mental health, and really having to grieve. Really grieving.
That's a great point. It's not the same thing, but it's very similar and should be treated as such, because like I've lost, my daughter died, my mom died in the past year, my dad died about 11 years ago. There's a grieving process that goes with that. That is an experience. But what nobody teaches you, I don't think, is that you have to grieve the relationship loss. That's a death. And that's a great point, that you have to treat that as such. And I think that would have been easier or would be easier for a lot of people if they understood that's a process. It's you are grieving the death of a relationship because it's very, personal, very intense. What was the worst point? Was there a point that was just that you can identify as that was the lowest point in that 6-month time frame?
I can. My son, Anthony, was graduating from high school, and I said that my husband had left in April 2021. So Anthony's graduation was in May, I believe. It was actually in May because it was COVID time.
Right.
So graduation was a little early, but maybe it was June. I don't remember. It was shortly after my husband had moved out. And oh God, this was a bad day. We planned to go together as a family to graduation. And this is when I was still hoping that we were going to work things out. I hadn't told anybody. Just my closest friends knew that he wasn't living with me anymore, but nobody knew what was going on. So we go to graduation and putting on, I'm broken inside. I'm seeing all these families from the school who you've known forever. Your kids grew up with all these kids and all these families, and seeing all these people and acting like we're like a normal family, knowing that we're not a normal family. I remember after graduation going to brunch with him and our 2 sons. And we're sitting in there at brunch, and I remember, I've never told this story, putting my hand on his back. I was sitting next to him, and I felt him like stiffen, kind of like he didn't like that.
Right.
Not good touch. He didn't like that. And I went, oh God, oh shit. And the whole time through graduation, through the ceremony, through the brunch, it's about 5.5 hours total. I remember just trying to keep my shit together and not cry in front of my kids and try to behave like a normal person. And the second he dropped me off at the house and he left, I fell apart. And
You were alone in the house?
I was alone in the house at the point the kids were not there. And I remember, God, this is embarrassing, but I remember taking Xanax and drinking a bottle of wine. Wasn't trying to hurt myself. I just needed to anesthetize because I swear to you, it's embarrassing. It's not embarrassing. It's vulnerable to share that. I can only share it because I'm in a much better place now.
Sure.
That's why I can tell the story. But I did that. And I think maybe I didn't care what happened to me. I just needed to not feel that pain anymore.
I totally understand.
Yeah.
Yeah. You just want to get out of that moment and not feel for a little while.
Yes. And, you said earlier that you think that people who have not been through divorce may not understand the nuance and just how difficult it is. Because I know, maybe people listening to this are thinking, like, well, people get divorced all the time. Like, you just get over it, whatever, who cares? That was not my experience. You have to understand, I didn't want this to happen. And I think that I grew up in such a family that was highly dysfunctional. I'm not close to my family of origin. So when I created this family with my then husband and our kids, I was so proud of that. It was like, oh my gosh, look what I've overcome. Growing up the way that I did in an alcoholic family riddled with all kinds of disorders and all kinds of addictions, was able to get out of that and then create a different kind of family. And so to me, that was sort of my validation. It's like, okay, I did it. And my family was always more important to me than my career, more than anything. That's all I cared about. And so when that came apart, it was like I lost my identity. I just didn't know what to do. So graduation day was the worst day. And I remember friends calling to check on me and I wasn't answering the phone and freaked them out. And that was a bad day.
And then there comes a day where you have to go, okay,
Right.
Was that the next day?
No.
Was it months later? Is there a moment that you remember specifically going, okay, today's the day, or this is the moment, or whatever, I'm going to take a deep breath, and today I'm going to get up, and this is going to be the best day, and I'm going to make this better. We're starting right now.
No, I would not say it was a moment like that
Okay.
for me. It was a gradual process. I started to think, okay, I can't live like this anymore. I can't do this. I cannot drink my feelings away. I can't shop my feelings away. I can't flirt, text with men this away. I can't, and I believe me, I tried all these things.
Yeah.
I tried it all. Doesn't work, as it turns out. It just creates more problems for you later on,
Sure.
know? So I started to say, ask myself, and here I am a coach, by the way, right? It's easier to do other people's lives than it is your own.
Absolutely.
We all know this.
Absolutely.
And, knowing the things that I work on with my clients and that I know work for me.
Well, I don't mean to interrupt, but you mentioned something. Did your clients know what you were going through, or were you trying to keep that hidden from them?
I did keep that hidden from them.
Okay, which is doubly hard because you've got this raw emotion that you're dealing with every day while you're trying to hide that from them while you're trying to be a good coach all at the same time.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I'll tell you, I actually think that what I've been through in my life makes me a better coach, and I'll circle back to that
Sure.
in a minute. But I think that I started to ask myself, okay, Colleen, what would bring health to you today? What would bring
Good
health to
question.
you today, right? It's a great question to ask
Great
yourself.
question.
If you ever ask, Ace, if you're having a day when you are particularly missing Peyton or, having just a really extra
Sure.
difficult time. Maybe it's Christmas, maybe it's a birthday, maybe it's, whatever it is, it's Father's Day. I don't know. To really ask yourself that, what can serve me today? What can help me? What can bring health? What can bring love? What can I sit with this
a
pain?
great question.
Right? So I asked myself, what can bring health today? Okay, going for a walk. Okay, drinking another glass of water. This is not sexy, earth-shattering stuff, but it was little by little, baby step by baby step. I thought, I am still here on this planet. I can't give up and say my life is over. My life with that man is over, but my life is not over. And that was the thing. Okay, I've got to fight for that. And I have to fight for my life and who I know myself to be.
But it's hard.
Oh, it's hard as shit.
Because
terrible. It's terrible.
It's hard because if you're anything like I was and going through all of the, trying to work things out and work through things, you have a day okay, what can bring me health today? Today was a good day. I feel good about it. I'm on the right track. I'm moving forward. And 2 days later, it's a disaster, and I'm sitting there all alone with a bottle of vodka, and it's this sucks, And
Yeah. So you can relate to
yeah.
Okay.
And you're then I think, I really screwed that up. Now I got to start all over again and get myself hyped back up to keep going.
Yes. So you know what I would say to you about that, and I would say to anybody listening who's on a healing journey, that you can't think of it as a straight up trajectory. It doesn't work that way.
Right.
It's not okay, well, today was a good day. That must mean I've turned a corner. And we like it to be that way because if you're watching someone you love, someone you care about who's going through a difficult time, and as soon as they go, well, I had a good day today, you're like, awesome, great job, buddy. We're on the right path now.
Yeah.
Because it's uncomfortable to watch them backslide. Or not even backslide. It's hard to watch them suffer. It's
Right.
hard to watch them in pain. But we need to do a better job of witnessing other people's pain and holding space for them in their pain. Because healing and grieving is not a straight up trajectory. We don't just get better day by day by day by day and then we've arrived. You will grieve your daughter the rest of your life, Ace. You know this.
Yeah. And that's what I thought though going forward. Well, okay, then there'll be a day we'll kind of move past this and it'll be good. And it comes in odd moments, weird things, little things on TV, blah, blah, blah. You're flipping through TikTok. And if I see that stupid TikTok about a daughter is your little friend, I can't get past that fast enough when it pops
Yeah.
scoop to the next one.
Yep.
But even going back to when my marriage was everything was ending, it was such a loss. And I felt like such a failure in the whole process. And then, it's okay, tomorrow's going to be better. And then I did it one time on my podcast. I likened it to, because I have to put everything in sports terms because it seems cleaner for me. I can understand that. With very few exceptions, you figure the greatest NBA basketball team that has ever existed did not go undefeated. And I realized, and I started putting okay, you can be, whatever your final record is, 70-12 for the season. But that means you still had 12 nights. You weren't the best. You got beaten.
Yeah.
And they still came back. And you look at baseball teams, the greatest baseball teams of all time probably lost 40 games in a season because they play so many games. That's 40 or 50 nights. They weren't the best team in the world. They still overcame that and came back. And, rattled off another 5 or 6 more before they had a bad day, that kind of thing. So that was the only way I've been able to kind of understand it is, okay, we took a loss today, but tomorrow maybe if we can get a couple wins in a row and string them together, we'll get on a hot streak, that kind of thing,
I think that's a great analogy.
Yeah.
It's great. And then those grow exponentially,
it's
right?
hard to do.
It's so hard to do. But like I said, you find yourself laughing more or smiling more. When I say that you will grieve the rest of your life, I don't mean that you don't. Obviously, you have lots of moments of joy and happiness and love in your life today. It's just that we need to make the space bigger to hold all of it. There's to be able to hold the sadness or the anger or, and the joy and the good stuff too. We can't be so quick to run from the scary, difficult emotions because they're there. You can't just push them down.
Right.
They're there. We have to deal with them.
And to not feel guilty for feeling good. I did a podcast once, and the title was, "It's okay to feel okay." Because you have to learn that, especially after Peyton died. It was like, it's okay to still go out and have a good time and then not feel guilty. Like, well, she's not here. Well, that's okay. It's, you got it. She would want you to feel good, and be happy and all that kind of stuff. So
Yes,
I think
of
that's an
course.
important lesson for everybody to learn. And you mentioned something. It's not linear. You don't just suddenly, okay, today we're back on an upward trajectory and we're going to be good from here on out.
Yes. Oh, it doesn't work like that.
Yeah, it's not
I wish
that
it
at all.
did. I wish it did.
Yeah. So you kind of work through that. Was there any place you went to as far as was it books? You mentioned meditation. Was there somewhere that you pulled strength from, or a couple of key places that you look back on and go, man, that was really important or really important? Because I think sometimes if we can all find one or two things to kind of latch on to, it'll help you grow a little bit, if that makes sense.
Yes, it does make sense. And I totally agree with you. I'd say the first thing were my friends. I have a very close-knit group of friends who they are family to me. They are my family, and without them, it sounds trite, but I don't know where I would be. I really don't. I really don't. They really helped me. They really rescued me. They really just were there for me and let me cry as much as I need to and scream as much as I need to. And they let me do all of that. So I would say that meditation, yes. 1,000%, which I know people go, meditation, who has time for that? You just sit and think about all your problems. That's actually not what it is. It was at first for me. It was like I'd try to meditate and I'm like, oh, that son of a bitch, he ruined my life, And then I started to get, that's not what it is. It's about creating that space I was talking about. And it's having a place to deal with very difficult emotions. And I listened to, I read Dan Harris's book, 10% Happier. If you remember that he famously had a panic attack anchoring the news on Good Morning America about a dozen years ago. He ended up getting into meditation as a way to deal with his panic and wrote a book about it. Now he has an app and a podcast called 10% Happier, and it's amazing. That is a resource that brought me a lot of strength. Oddly enough, where I had a hard time was at my church, and I don't know if it's because we went there as a family or what, but and not the people at my church. They're lovely human beings. It has nothing to do with that. It's just when people.
It's different when you walk in the door now.
It's totally different.
Totally different when you walk in the door. Same people, same building. You could go with your son, but when you walk in, you are different, and you will never be the same.
Yeah.
And that's a very different thing. And that was one of the things. And I didn't mean to interrupt you, but that just struck a nerve because. I remember when we had our conversation about everything, one of the things was my ex-wife did not want to go to, we kind of agreed we won't go to the same church, whatever. So for me, it was, I'll try this place. And I'm not going to act like I was an avid churchgoer during that period of time because I wasn't. We had been before, and I was just kind of feeling lost or whatever. And I went to a couple of different places when I would go, probably 5 times the first year. And then we went to a wedding that was back at the church. And it was just weird. Seeing people I knew very well that I had seen outside of church. It was just, because you are a different person.
Yeah. Yes, and not necessarily because they're doing anything, and maybe I carried. You'd mentioned the guilt that you felt when your marriage ended. I felt that too. I felt guilt. I felt shame. I felt like I'd let people down.
Sure.
And I still struggle with feelings of that. I do still
Yeah,
have
same here.
Yeah, right. That's a tough one. I'm still working through that, and maybe will until the day I drop dead. I don't know, but yeah, I still have feelings of guilt and shame even now when I see people who I haven't seen for 2 years, and
Right.
I have that, oh God, are they going to ask me questions, and it's weird, but yeah, I thought, but I didn't find it at church, and it wasn't, again, nothing against the people, but I think that what started to fall flat for me when people would say, well, Colleen, God has a plan. It's like, that doesn't give me any comfort at all, like zero comfort. It really didn't help me. It didn't do anything for me. I was like, okay, well, this plan sucks and I don't like it and I want a new one. So I just found that the acceptance of, I had to radically accept what my life was. I mean, I really had to say, this is the deal. Don't live in denial. Don't drink your way out of this. Don't eat your way out of this. Don't shop your way out of this. Accept this is what's happening. Living, a new day will dawn. You can find joy in simple things. And I really started, and meditation helped me do that. To be like, this cup of coffee is so freaking good. I love it. And was like, okay, it is good to be alive. It's a miracle to be here. I do not want to take that for granted for 1 second anymore. So, but those were the things that helped me. A close group of friends and meditation and therapy, of course, talk therapy, and those and spiritual practices really are what have helped me not be down in the dumps anymore, and to believe that life is good and worth living.
So you feel yourself making that turn, okay?
Yes.
And then is there a moment where you, for lack of a better term, where
Sure.
you kind of reemerge back into the public? The story's out there, people know, maybe you've been hiding out a little bit, but there's a time where you have to be like, okay, I'm going to have to get back out and, life has to begin. So I have to fully live. What was that like for you?
Did you know I was totally hiding? I was, by the way. I was totally hiding.
I didn't know that,
funny.
but I was guessing.
I was
only because I was hiding out for like a year and a half or so. And nobody knew.
after the divorce?
After the divorce, yeah. And yeah, with Peyton's deal, it was so different because it was so public.
So public, yeah.
And, there was no getting around it or whatever, the thing.
Right.
It was on the news and it was everywhere. It was in the paper and, I did interviews about it because immediately I thought, not to make this about me, sorry, but
No.
immediately I thought, okay, the only way I'm going to get through this is if I turn this into something positive. And when I gave her eulogy, that's one of the things that I talked about was, we have to do something with this. Here's the mistake. Okay, we're going to do all these positive things. I'm going to be positive. I'm going to make people be excited about their lives and make them appreciate their lives. We're going to be so positive about this. And what I never did was go, hang on, how do you feel right now? What are you doing? How are you handling all of this? And I was just going to effing barrel right through it, and we're gonna make it work, and we're gonna do great things. And about, I don't know, a few months later, I called TJ, I went down the way to work. I said, I can't, and to his credit, he told me before, look, if it ever happens, do you need a day? Just anytime. I was like, today's not the day. I was driving to work. I was like, I can't do it. I just can't do it. Today I can't do it. And I drove all the way to Charleston, turned around, got a candy bar and energy drink, and drove all the way back. And that was my entire day. I just couldn't get life together that day. It was one of those, and I've had several of those episodes, some worse than others, because that's one of my faults. It's like, we're just going to do positive things. We're going to do great things and help people. And in reality, you got to take some time to figure out, I'm not good at meditation. I'm not a great prayer, but it's kind of the same thing. But there's a moment there when you come back, you come back out into the world, so to speak. What was that like stepping out into the sunlight again? You're like, whew, man, this is brighter than I thought it was going to be, or whatever.
I thought, oh, this feels good.
Yeah.
The sun feels good. I'll answer that question in a moment, but I want to tell you what you described was your experience. that is sort of spiritual bypassing, right? That's
Okay.
a little bit of that kind of, yep, yes, terrible thing, and we're gonna help people, which is great, but not until you have dealt with Ace's big feelings and all of that, and having
And I put that off for a long time.
well, you were probably taking care of everybody else because I'm sure people were looking at you and they were so sad, and then you're like, oh, I'm going to be okay because we're going to do this and we're going to.
I was trying to be, very positive for everybody. Like we're going to be, everybody's going to be good,
Right, and you're allowed to fall apart.
Yeah.
And I think men are not told that enough. You're allowed to fall apart and cry and just fall apart.
Sure.
You don't have to keep it together all the time. And that's why I tell people we can't ignore the big, difficult emotions. Toxic positivity, I do not believe in it. I think it's actually harmful when we're too quick to put the spin on it. Think of it like this. You want to teach from the scar, not the wound. When it's very fresh, right?
Okay.
When it's fresh, like even with, when I was still like submerged in the anger and bitterness that I felt, and being quite victim-y, if I do say so myself. I can own that,
Right.
that I was like, oh, my life is terrible and it's over and everything sucks and I'm never going to fall in love and no one wants a 52-year-old woman and oh my God, and all that stuff. When because those are the things I told myself, that I thought were true, and it was just over for me, and I'm all washed up, I'm an old lady, and no one's going to want me. Like, what's the reality of that? Yeah. Probably no. There's lots of options for me, right? So, but I couldn't teach what I was learning about my divorce in that time because it was still a big, open, gaping wound.
Right.
Well, now the scar has started to form, so that's why I can talk about it now and share some of the things that I have learned in the process. So I offer that just as a reminder to you and something to your listeners about, using your story to help.
Teach from the scar, not the wound.
Yes.
I like that.
Because if we teach from the wound, usually it comes out really messy and kind of.
So you seem very comfortable, very at ease with all of it now. Is that true? Or is it, are there still days where you just, it's overwhelming?
Yeah. There are days when I wouldn't say it's overwhelming. There are days that I get very sad, and it's usually stems from something, some triggering kind of thing, Mother's Day, or, I still, even when I hear my kids saying something about, they're college age now, but when I hear them talking about their dad or, oh, hey, are you going there with dad? Yeah, I got to get my stuff for mom's. I'm going to take it to dad's. Something happens to me inside.
Yeah.
Like I get a little, my heart seizes a little bit because I don't like that they're seeing my kids pack their bag and get in their cars and go off to their dads. I don't like it, but I am able to hold it. I'm able to sit with it and go like, ugh, yucky, okay, and I'm still okay.
Right.
And I'm all right, and I'm here, and I'm fine. And then emerge into the sunlight again. Because once I stopped hiding and started talking and sharing, I actually find it very therapeutic. And I do think I've been able to help a lot of people who go, yeah, divorce sucks, and I'm still 10 years later, I haven't been on a date, and I'm angry. I'm like, okay, well, let's turn that around. Like, now it's time to turn it around.
Right.
Or, now it's time to do something.
So how important were the kids during this process? Because you mentioned this happened a month before your son graduated high school. Is your daughter older or younger?
Two boys. Anthony is older.
Yeah.
Alden's 1 grade behind his brother. Okay. So he was entering his senior year of high school.
Which is a tough time. To have that kind of upheaval. So how did that play into things? Because obviously you want to be good, set a good example, be bright and cheery. Was that difficult to be that person with everything that was going on, as heavy as your heart was and even in your head at that point?
Sadly, I was not that person. I was not bright and cheery. And in front of my children, and you hear, how I said divorce brings out the worst in people, especially if it's, I hear people say, oh, you just got to pull it together for the kids. And yes, I agree with that. You should, if you can, you should do that. I did not put on the bright, cheery face for my kids. They saw me depressed. They knew I was a wreck, and it was very hard for them.
But they would have known anyway.
Even if I'd been like, okay, guys, come on, let's go. Yes, you're right. They would have known anyway.
Yeah, they would have.
They would have known. Yeah. So, and that's part of the guilt I carry too, though. I think that I wasn't better for them, I guess. But
Sure.
but quite frankly, I don't know how I could have been. So I've really had to forgive myself for that. Because I can really get into a lot of judgment about the way I behaved immediately following the demise of my marriage. Like I said, with the drinking and with the just this and not being able to function. And I've really had to forgive myself for that and say, like, you know what? It's okay.
Is that easy for you?
No.
Self-forgiveness? Because I'm really bad at it. And I've been through a lot of therapy regarding just that particular thing. Like, you've got to let go of this stuff. You cannot change. And I tell people that all the time. And you can't change it, so it's going to be fine. And I'm just lying because I'm terrible at it. I have a tremendous amount of guilt that I still carry over Peyton's death, where you wonder, like, what did I do wrong? Like, could I have been better, or could I have done something differently? Or going back to have we never gotten divorced? Would that have happened to her? Or, would life have been different for her or something? Like, would she not have been there that night? If, all that kind of shit, all these weird things that you start putting together and you realize, like, of course, none of that, it all just is ridiculous. You're just worrying yourself to death. But I've never reached that point of being able to totally, truly, forgive myself over how all those things have turned out. Is it difficult for you?
It is.
Yeah.
It's very difficult. It's a good thing you're friends with me because I can help you with this, Actually, I really am passionate about this stuff because I think that it keeps your suffering alive so much to think that somehow you did something to cause the X, Y, and Z.
Right.
Because you did not. You're not responsible for what happened to her. It's not your fault.
And it's kind of like I know that,
Right.
but I don't.
Intellectually, you know it,
Yes.
yet you still at 3:00 in the morning might have a thought that makes you go, "Oh,
Like, exactly. I know that, but I still always, will wonder, man, if we hadn't divorced when we did, or if I had done this differently, or she had been living with me for a while, and then she moved to a cool little place uptown, and Amanda and I lived right around the corner, and so we saw her all the time. Then would she have been up here that night, even up here to see her mom, and then that, all those different things. Just you replay all that stuff in your head, none of which would have made any difference. Intellectually, you know that, but your heart just sometimes won't let it go.
right." And and that's what I'm talking about. These practices, these sort of spiritual practices, and maybe I won't use the word meditation if that freaks you out too much, but there are ways to get that into your heart and into your bones and into your, the marrow of your bones,
Yeah.
like to really go like, okay, I do forgive myself for ways I knowingly and unknowingly hurt my family or people I loved or my first wife or whatever it is. There are ways that you can do that, truly. And these are the practices that I tell you I engage with every day because it's I can do one thing and then go like, oh God, I'm such an idiot. And oh my God, I'm the worst. I'm the worst mother.
Right.
I'm the worst human. Oh my God.
That's me.
Right? I'm the worst. I
All right.
suck. I suck so bad. Oh my God.
Yeah.
And it's like, wait a minute. And I'm telling you, even if you take nothing else away from this conversation, anyone who's listening, and this includes you too, Ace, like if you get into a moment of self-judgment or the beat down or I'm a horrible person, catch that you're doing it and douse it with some self-compassion instead. Like, yeah, I'm a person who makes mistakes sometimes and it's okay. And I really try my best to learn from my mistakes. And I try to be self-aware and I'm doing things differently now. Like, douse it with self-compassion. It helps to soften it. So it's not so like, I'm the worst guy ever.
It's interesting. Mine comes from outside because the great blessing that I have is Amanda, who I met, let's see, my marriage had been over for a couple years but it had just been legally done because it was a long process.
Yes.
And it takes a long time. And then it all kind of fell into place. And then we met each other in 2017. And she hears me a lot of times just getting frustrated and be like, God, she's like, how stupid do you have to be? I'm very much a talk to yourself type of person.
Yeah.
And she'll come down the hall and say, hey, you need to just, It's okay. It's not that big a deal. You're fine. You're a great person. She constantly reminds me, hey, you're a good person, all this kind of stuff, which has been super helpful. She's been this wonderful blessing. That and the people that listen to this show and the people that work on this show have been a tremendous blessing to me.
That's wonderful.
Because a lot of them think I'm way better than I really am. And a lot of times I feel like I'm the only person that knows the truth. Y'all have no idea what you're up against.
Oh, I don't believe it. Oh, well, but that's common. Most people think those things about themselves.
What's the most important thing to you now in moving forward? You know, what is it that drives you now going forward? Because you seem to be in such a good place now. Your business is doing well. You seem happy and very positive and a lot of great things going. Like, what is it now that keeps you moving forward?
I would say purpose, like feeling like living with intention and purpose. I don't always do that, but every day, no matter what's happening, if I'm in a crummy mood, if I, yelled at my son or something like that, or, just had a moment to say, okay, no, let's get back on. You're not done yet. Like, you're still here. I believe if we have a pulse, we have breath, we have purpose on this planet. Like, there's something for you to be doing. So I come back to, okay, how do I help other people? Like, what can I do to help other human beings live more awakened lives, live better, relieve some of their suffering? That's really what drives me. And I don't say that to sound like, oh, isn't she a sweet, good? No, I'm really not that sweet. That's like, I'm not that sweet. I seem very sweet, but I'm really not that sweet. It's not about that. I just believe it kind of I just sort of know that, okay, I think that's what I'm supposed to be doing, is just helping people and serving people. So that's what, I can't be of use to anybody if I sit in my house and don't go anywhere and don't talk to anybody and don't share things like this and don't talk about the mistakes I've made. Mm-hmm. And if I just watch Netflix, right? I cannot be of any service to anyone.
I don't have another skill set to offer people. Like, this is it.
This is what you're good at.
So if I could build a deck or something, I could work at people's houses. And if I was a carpenter, I could build them a deck and they'd be so happy. And I'd be like, look at what I did today. I gave these people this great, wonderful space. They're going to raise a family. It's going to be awesome. And I could feel good about myself. I don't have that skill. All I have is this. And it's the only thing. And I tell people every week on this podcast, like, look, the only thing that helps me is the thought that maybe I'm helping somebody in whatever it is we're talking about today. Like, if this helps one person today, that makes me feel a lot better, because maybe this is what I'm supposed to be doing, because I don't have any other skills to offer people. This is the only one I've got.
Well, I'm glad this is your skill, because you do help so many people.
I hope so.
As you always have. I've known you forever. Yeah. You are a good man. Like, you have used your platform for good always, for as long as I've known you.
We had good parents growing up. It's one of those things. It's kind of somebody asked us one time about being involved. Like, this all comes from, and I think TJ may have been the person that said it years ago. He's like, this all comes from the way we were raised. And, growing up in church, and this is, you're supposed to be helping people. And God knows that I'm not the best Christian in the world, but I'm doing the best I can sometimes. I could be doing a lot better. But,
God forgives you. It's okay.
Just important. It just seems to be important. It's what makes me feel good. Again, it gives you a sense of accomplishment.
Yes.
And anytime you encounter kids that have been on a Green Kids trip or something, it makes me proud. Like, man, I'm really proud of what we've done. And it's good to feel it. And it's okay to feel proud of the things that you've done.
Oh,
in life.
Absolutely. I think sometimes that gets a bad rap. Like, we act like
absolutely.
Pride is this. No, I always tell people, go do something that makes you proud. It doesn't make you feel proud to binge watch Emily in Paris. It doesn't make you feel proud, but it does make you feel, not knocking that. Sometimes that's just what the doctor ordered.
Sometimes you need that.
Yeah, I totally get it. But, you do feel proud of all those Green Kids trips that you've taken and what you've been able to give to families. And that's good. You should feel that. Like, I think we need to live our lives if we're living our lives in a way that makes us proud, that must mean we're doing something good for other people.
So you mentioned something a minute ago that I think is key, that you weren't real proud of yourself at a time. So sitting here today, after all this is gone and everything's going on, what are you proud of yourself for today, right now?
Well, I'm proud of myself for committing to healing. I'm proud of that because it's not easy to do. I could keep eating and drinking away my feelings if I wanted to. Yeah. I could do that. But to actually dig in and to do the work that I needed to do to heal and be okay, to show up here and talk to you today, I'm proud of that I have not backed off of that I'm still actively involved in my healing and hopefully helping other people to do the same. That I am proud of. I'm very proud of the work I do with my clients. I love them. They're amazing. And I'm proud of the work that they're doing and that we do together. Of that, I'm proud. And yeah.
That's fantastic.
I'm
you
proud.
should be proud of that.
And I'm still proud of my family. You know, it may not look the way it did before. But I am proud of my family.
You should be.
Yes, thank you.
Which one of your sons is jacked?
That's Anthony. That's the
Good
older one. I know. He's a big dude, right? He's a big dude.
That is insane, the discipline that it takes to do that. So before we get one question, you just said something. Last thing, commit to healing. Is that the first step for everybody? Do you think?
Anyone in a grieving journey, you mean? Or I don't know if it's the first step, but it's certainly a step. I think if somebody is going through loss right now, whatever that is, it could be job loss, it can be you filed for bankruptcy, the loss of a loved one, the loss of your own health declining, aging, maybe, you know,
the only reason I said it was because even if you're dealing with alcoholism or drugs or divorce or whatever, until you said those words, I never really thought of it that way. Okay, it never occurred to me. Until you commit to healing, it's impossible. You can't do it. Like,
that's true. You're right. Okay, so maybe that is the first
like
step
saying,
then.
I'm gonna exercise, but until you commit to going to the gym 5 days a week and I'm gonna commit to being on the treadmill and eating grilled chicken every day, it's not gonna do you any good because you can say I'm just gonna get some exercise and go 1 day a week. You haven't committed. Mm-hmm. I think that those three words when you said them struck a chord with me. Like, oh, you got to commit to healing. Mm-hmm. Then maybe you can begin to put everything in place and move the process forward.
I think we do. We all have to commit to healing.
That's a great point.
It's even healing your old traumas, whatever they are, if they're from childhood or whatever the thing is that, and you know what your thing is, you know what it is. We have to commit to doing that work. And there's so many resources available. There's so many avenues to be able to do this and without spending a ton of money, so, and it makes your life more vibrant.
And part of committing to healing, I would say you just mentioned something about resources and made me think, is don't be ashamed or afraid of reaching out to these resources because you would be shocked at what other people have been through and how much other people can often understand. When you find the right resource, you find the right thing. Once you start talking to people and they start sharing their story, you're like, oh, well, wait a minute, I'm not nearly out here as alone as I thought I was. I'm not the only one going through this because you see somebody's family on Instagram and you think they never do anything wrong. What a perfect family. And you have and you have no idea that everybody's been through stuff. Everybody has stuff. And when you reach out for help from people like that, they'll be the first ones to help you because they understand where you've been and where you're trying to get.
I know, like we all think we're so effed up. Like, if people knew this about me, they would totally judge me. And you're like, oh, and you start sharing. You're like, oh, I get it too. Oh, yes, I screamed too. I acted like a psycho bitch too. Like we all have that. That we all do it sometimes.
Sure.
Right? It's not our best, no, but it's like you have to forgive yourself for that.
Yeah.
So
it's part of the process.
Yeah.
Thank you. You had to come a long way today to do this, but thank you for coming up here and doing this and for being so raw and honest with everything, because that's the only way I think people are going to be helped if they really see what people who've successfully come out the other side of things are and how they got to be there. They have to understand what it took to get there. And I think that's fantastic. And it's very much appreciated.
Oh, thank you. I'm honored that you asked me to be on your show.
I'm
a big fan of yours.
I'm a huge fan, and I think what you're doing now is really good work, and it's very important, and I think you're going to help a lot of people.
Oh, thank you, my friend. You too.
Thank you.
Now, whatever you're going through, you're not alone. You are a part of the Meaningful Meeting, presented by the Radio Network. Copyright ATJ Inc. 2022.